Yeah, fixing our PWA on iOS. Hi, my name is Peter. Like Jasper said, I'm a front-end developer at Voorhoede. I have a background in mobile app development, primarily in hybrid things. So I did something with Corona, it's written in Lua, which deploys to iOS and Android, and also with Adobe Air. And then I came to work here and use Cordova more. That's a bit history about myself. What we'll be talking about today is the project that Jasper just described to you. The goal, what is the thing we're trying to do? Well, we had a couple of tries to get it right. So first I want to talk you to the first try, second try. We touched up a little bit, and then I'm going to share the lessons learned. But first, let's meet our PWA. Press again. It's a basic progressive web app. It just loads in the website. You can click around, have a full screen environment. I just clicked around randomly. I don't know which item to quickly. You can go back and forth. Just the default. It's installable to home screen, like you could see. It has a splash screen. If you don't have a Wi-Fi connection or don't have a connection, it has an offline fallback page. And you don't have any Chrome with it. And then they ask, well, could it be done with iOS? Because, oh no, my product owner has an iPhone. Oh crap. Well, why is this a problem? Because Safari doesn't support the progressive web app features. They full on going on the mobile apps, and that's what you get. So no add to home screen for a website, no offline fallback, no Chromeless website. If you want all those things, you have to build a native app. Well, that's an issue because we're building a website. So our goal is have the team focus on building a good progressive web app. So they have no distractions from other platforms, spend your money once and do it right. But they still have an app store presence, and the client doesn't want to abandon their existing users. So, well, we had to come up with a solution for that. For iOS and Android, by the way, and that made something a bit more difficult. And mirror the functionality as closely as possible. Well, a bit of a disclaimer, if you want to do this on iOS, throw your service worker out of the way because, well, it doesn't work. What we try to do is have native apps follow along with our progressive web app, basically make a wrapper around the website and present that as a mobile app. So let's try the first try. Use Cordova. Why? Cordova is a long-running project. It has a big community with a lot of plugins. It lets you build a mobile app with web technology, but it's still a mobile app. So you write your HTML, you write your CSS, you package it into the app, and it gets loaded into a WebView. You have some more kind of a bridge to talk to native code, but yeah, you write actual web content. And that web content is rendered as web content. It has a web view, and that's running your app. And with the plugins, you can do stuff like push notifications and native share functionality and stuff like that. So how's that set up? We thought, well, we're not going to ship our HTML and JavaScript and CSS with the client. We're just going to point Cordova directly at PWA. So instead of running it from the local device, run it from the server. Add some kind of functionality to the PWA so that it can talk to Cordova and let them work together and then profit. So we're not packaging any logic or assets on the device itself. We load it in. And we do let the server know that we are running from this wrapper via a query parameter. So, well, we can do little tweaks if needed. That's about it. So that looks like this. We have a web server, which sends to the website. We have the Cordova files running on the device itself. And it should be sounded good. So this is the setup that we first tried it with. And then came a reality check. Well, first of all, PWA is served over HTTPS. Okay, but all our Cordova logic, the bridge to the native code, is served from the file system, which uses the file protocol. They don't really match. They don't match that much that we even can't load our complete Cordova JavaScript because we pointed our WebView to the website. That was kind of annoying. But the same goes for ads. The ads were served over HTTP, which throws in another protocol that didn't match. And then there are some other things. iOS doesn't have a physical back button like Android does. So not only do we have to put in the logic to communicate to Cordova, we also have to, if you're coming from the wrapper, put in extra UI elements specifically for this use case. Otherwise, users get stuck when they navigate through pages because they don't have a way to go back. Then with a lot of other frustrations, we thought, well, maybe it's time to refactor a bit. We put all the Cordova logic on the server, and we add a custom UI for iOS. So we put that in the website itself if you're coming from the web. So that looks like this. All the Cordova logic, that means also all the JavaScript code from plugins, Cordova itself, everything shipped to the website. Well, that should have worked. Oh, crap. Now we have all this logic running in the same context. If there's only one JavaScript error, be it in Cordova itself, for some reason, be it artful, or maybe even an app that's really, really crappy, it crashes the whole app because all the logic is running in the same environment. And that environment is a WebView that Cordova provided you, which you are operating inside of. And those ads are still annoying because they are served over HTTP. And our base page is served over HTTPS. So remote origin issues, well, they got annoying. And then there's the benefit of having a security issue. Because if you serve a malicious ad, they also potentially have the same access to the whole environment that you're in, even to the Cordova bridge. So now you have the possibility of having an ad running native logic through your application. But maybe the biggest issue of them all is that you don't control the actual WebView. You control what's inside of the WebView. So we thought maybe it's time for a new approach. Let's give it a second try. React Native came along and became well, more reliable, let's put it that way. What is React Native? You create an actual mobile app. You write it with JavaScript, which create an actual mobile app. All your JavaScript is converted into mobile logic, and you have the actual UI elements that you know from the operating system, and you can use that. That includes the WebView, so we have control over the WebView. So what will this solve? With React Native, you can create native components. So we create by ourselves a WebView that's under our control. The custom UI elements that we had to add because iOS doesn't have a back button, we can put in, but we can lay it on top of the WebView. So whatever happens in the WebView, it happens, but our UI is is still working. So that has a lot of improvements. For one, we have control of the WebView, and that gives us that on should start load with request method. What this does is every single request that the WebView makes go through this method, and we can either say, well, go load it yourself, or I will handle it for you. Kind of like what Fetch does in the server. Not completely, but kind of. Okay, then this is our setup. We have the website like it is, exactly like it is. Point our WebView to it, have the ads being loaded like I always do, and put our native elements on top of it. And the best of all, we can control everything from React Native. So the UI does not crash when there's an error, because it's contained within that environment. And even malicious code is being trapped inside that thing because it has nowhere else to go. That being said, you can communicate with the WebView from the React Native environment via post messages, but it's not a security threat because it has to be handled on a, specifically by the logic of React Native. And we can even handle error events. So if a page doesn't load, we can show some new UI. So we can have a separate view, an offline view, and display it instead of the web view if there anything might go wrong. Is this a silver bullet? Not really. That on should start load with request function. It's really nice if you're on iOS. But yeah, we have to support Android as well. We can't do something about it. There's this other method on navigation state change that's supported on Android as well. What it does is when the navigator of the web view changes, say it loads a new URL, or even if it gets updated with a title, you get a notification out of it, and you can handle accordingly. It's a bit different because now you're reacting to something that already happened, where before you could act before something would be happening. It's not the same, but it's okay. It's workable. But there's more. The support on iOS and Android at the same time, it's quite difficult because implementations of the web view from React Native on both these platforms, they differ. So you have to account for all the different quirks that they have. The example that I just gave is one example of it, but there's more of them. Caching the requests is possible if you write native code. You can't do it without from within the web view that React Native provides. But if you have an iOS developer in your team, it's certainly possible to have it on the iOS side of things being handled. And you really could come quite a long way. But you have to re-implement kind of the spec that service worker would do, or at least its functionality. And the web view, it does have its quirks. We can get around it, but yeah, it has some quirks. It's the basic web view that you get from React Native is the UI web view, which is the old version. There is a new version that the Safari web browser is actually running in. Not the same, but it's there. Okay, all those things, let's touch up a little because we have a working website in it. Let's make it a bit nicer. And we're going to focus on perceived performance. Because what we have done so far, it worked, but it doesn't feel snappy. And well, your users downloaded a native app. They go through the App Store, they downloaded it. So they expect to have a snappy feel to it. So how can we improve that? Well, for once, we add a loading indicator for when you click on a page. And it looks like the Safari browser does. users are used to it, have something to look at when stuff is happening.
Is it real?
Not a question. no. It's, I have too little. The WebView doesn't give me enough information, but it serves its purpose because you're looking at something.
So this was actually a design.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's quite random in what it does.
Okay, cool.
So, well, I don't know if I can play it again.
It looks good.
This is a video, of course, but
But it completes only when the content is loaded. So if you can display it, if the request is received.
No, I show it when I'm going to load content.
Okay.
The duration of the full animation is random, from within 1 to 3 seconds or something, and the random point at where it's stopping is random. So, okay, this is tricking you quite a bit, but like I said, you have something to look at, and even
recorded.
yeah, but I'm going to be honest with you, even I got tricked by my own trick, because I have implemented it, I put it in, and I'm going to test it. And the big issue that I had was I wanted to go back too quickly. The website didn't load fully, so it didn't quite know where to go back to. So there were little issues, and this solved it because all of a sudden I know this loading. So I waited. Even I who built it and thought about it, and I know it was random, but I waited long enough for the browser to download all the things and have a smooth background experience. So even I got tricked. It proves that it kind of works. Okay. Another one. I had the custom UI element. First, it pops up when it was needed. Well, let's make it fade in. Just that fade in of 25th of a second. It's enough. You look at it and well, you feel there's a snappy thing to it because this animation is native, so it's smooth always. Well, how does it look in total? I'm going to click on random items. You decide. Just by adding.
Faster than your loading bar.
Yeah, but that's what you experience all the time. And because an actual loading bar on iOS loads everything, even ads and stuff, and all the JavaScript that's being loaded, the first pane that you see is rendered, and then you see the loading bar still going on. This is something that the user is accustomed to.
better than when your loading bar is finished and you still don't see any content, right?
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. And what if there's no connectivity? Do you still show the bar?
No.
Okay.
No, because
Like-
what I do
Oh,
if there's no connectivity,
Even didn't send.
my app will instantly get an error, and then I show the offline page. And
Did you also make like the download sort of offline page and stuff?
yeah, the offline page is an actual React Native component.
Ah, okay.
So I styled it exactly to match the one on the web.
Okay.
Because we truly don't have any service worker things, so I couldn't even cache anything. So I had to create it from scratch.
so to understand, it's when you publish the app in the App Store, are you including the progressive web app, or
No.
it is just downloading when you add the process?
It's actually downloading when you.
So probably it's really small, but you ship to the App Store.
Yeah. I come to that in a bit, but what I actually do is have the initial URL.
Yeah.
Is go to www.cloud.nl. That's it. All right. So the lessons learned. Bringing a PWA to iOS is hard. It's just a given. it's a bumpy road, but it's hard. Users expect a mobile app, so act accordingly. So if your website has a footer, people are not accustomed to have footers in their mobile app, so get rid of it. Other things, the share button that users expect a native share functionality in a native app. So if they download it through the store, make sure that's possible. And like I said, keep the wrapper as slim as possible. Your website is responsible for the UI, for the app feeling. This is merely a wrapper what we're building, and I have to put in one UI element. But that's all it is. Make sure that your wrapper is focused on handling the WebView and what it does, and do that well. And let the team that built the whole PWA figure out the rest. And then JavaScript performance in your PWA matters a lot, because, like I said, the WebView that's being loaded is an old version, so you have to act accordingly. And again, if you have an iOS developer on your team, be close friends with that guy, because he's going to save you quite a lot of trouble. I don't have experience with Objective-C or Swift development, so I didn't know. I had to do it with what React Native provided me. But if you have an iOS developer, team up with him, because he can make requests being saved to some database or whatever, and have those parts fixed.
And then you would sort of rebuild service worker technology.
Yeah.
With Swift or Objective-C.
Yeah. But looking at what service workers do, you have done it yourself. You as a developer of a service worker have to make sure that this request is stored in that place. Mm-hmm. So you have the tools, but you have to build it yourself. Mm-hmm. And there's all these specs, and maybe you can have some framework thing like SW2 but basically you have to build it yourself. So I don't see the big difference in doing it in Swift or do it in JavaScript.
As long as Swift has this, if there is in Swift or in Objective-C a way to store a response object, I guess not.
Yes.
If you're actually building
a
service worker.
I know there is. I know there is a way to store or have
modules, or like Cordova has plugins for modules. I don't know what's called.
Can you rephrase the question?
Don't you have any modules for React Native or community who's developing modules?
I find one blog post that would go into that, but it was kind of vague, and it was the only thing I could find, and it was not reliable. So no, I couldn't quite make it, but if anybody is an iOS developer, hook me up, because I really want to build something that's reliable. Are there any other questions? Yes.
So, and if you want to change the UI, does it get automatically updated? You change the background colors of the.
No, if you want to change UI elements that you put in the wrapper itself, then you have to go through the App Store.
No, but the browser web app. If you change the website itself.
The website itself, because it's loaded from the server, yeah, that's
it's not updated in the.
Yeah, it is even updated, but all the elements that UI elements that you put in with React Native, no, those won't get updated because they are packaged.
No, but the CSS.
The CSS is it's all fine. It's all downloaded every time you open it. Yeah, that's. Are there any other questions?
Are the ads are they working this?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're running inside of this WebView.
Also the ads in the iframe in iframe.
Even those. Because we're running, we have this WebView, which is basically a browser, and we don't put any extra logic in it.
Yeah.
So it's just a browser without a frame, and it handles exactly as you would expect it. So yeah, that works. Login did work. I had to add a couple of domains that I whitelisted. So the thing that I did is, if you click on an ad, you would go outside of the app and load that in Safari.
Yeah.
but I only want to have that for external domains. So if you go, if you want to log in, you have to, you are being directed to a different domain within the Trouw website.
Yeah.
Those I keep in the WebView, and all the other stuff.
So you look when a navigation event, navigate events. And
yeah, if that navigation state change event fired, when it did fire, I could stop the WebView from loading, and I had the URL in the event object, and that URL I opened in the different browser or in Safari. Yeah.
But you could also open it in a new webview.
You could, yeah.
And then like with Instagram and Facebook, when you open a link, they open their own.
Yeah, so you have an in-app browser with an in-app browser.
Yeah.
Well, it's not actually in the WebView, but yeah, you could load it on top of it. So.
Do you think it's worthy? It was worth it to build it this way in place of just hiring native iOS developers and just making it like the right way?
Yeah, I do. Although we have a few. Although we have a few itches here and there. We focus really hard on the website itself. So the actual content is being rendered. And like Jasper said in the introduction, visitor numbers doubled or tripled with that thing.
Yeah, but I mean as well, like maybe using the WebView, but instead of wrapping native React, wrapping the WebView in React Native, just developing the iOS app with the WebView inside. Because in my opinion, like. Maybe would be. I know that was the case. That was the. Yeah. So I'm just thinking.
I can't really tell you what would be better.
Why would you do that? Like React Native offers it already on this website.
Yeah, but wouldn't it solve some problems? I don't know.
Yeah, of course, but it would also mean you would have to develop.
I mean, like
from scratch.
Yeah, okay, right. But then you would have some access to cache.
Yeah. So what you said, build the wrapper completely in native code instead of having React Native. Yeah. If you have the luxury of having an iOS developer, yes, go for it. Definitely go for it. Yeah.
But in terms of investment, the React Native app was like 2 weeks of work. Maybe eventually we're trying this out compared to building something entirely from scratch, but maybe doing it natively.
And then you have the overhead of hiring another developer, getting to the team, having come get accustomed to the project.
Depends, right? Your overhead for Trouw as well as a React Native developer.
Yeah, but I did know a couple of things about the project itself, like that there would be a footer or how the ads were being handled. So I had some inside knowledge. So I think it was better to go with this form. If there's in your team an iOS developer, go with him. Yeah.
But I still don't really get what the advantage would be. But because you get the WebView,
but
you say you have total control over your WebView and over everything you do. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you
can you build plugins for you said you can build your own cache. So why would you start all over? Why not just use React Native and then you build the modules?
Let's say you don't have access to those events of downloading the page, so you just have to show the fake progress bar, right?
Maybe you probably can build a plugin that offers it. No, okay, but
I didn't want this to go that deep. I just wanted to.
Okay, that's
Are there more questions directed at Peter? Yeah, sir.
So, how is done the progress with app? It's done with use JavaScript and framework, because maybe you found this problem after building the progress with app, and if it would be at the beginning, you would choose maybe Angular and then Ionic.
No, the actual progress web app that we're talking about is native JavaScript. Yeah, there's no framework involved. It's Java backend which just serves rendered HTML.
And then React Native It has React in the name,
Yeah.
but you don't have to use React.
No.
It just grab whatever you put inside.
Yeah. No. I use React Native for the wrapper thing.
Yeah.
But it could have been
So
anything.
you don't have to use React as the
No. Most of it. No. You could load any website within the web.
So,
Yeah.
I have a short question about the WebView, because that would, to me, be the biggest, like the nastiest part, because these WebViews, especially the old ones, break easily. They have like very little CPU power, very little memory. If you put in a lot of images, it's really easy to break.
Yeah.
The old style WebView. So I guess you've tested it or stress tested it to some extent, but why don't you use? Well, I would still. That would, even if you can use the better WebView, that would still be, because you're sort of using it. You're making an app which already is an internet browser by itself.
Yeah. Sure. Now, and why not go for another route?
Well, maybe there is no. Maybe it's just that it just doesn't.
Well, when you build your PWA, it has to account for this WebView anyway, because people are going to share things in it.
But I mean, my whole project, the simple notion that you have to tell your client, okay, we're going to build something that has that will make for you a broken browser, and then we load websites inside that. And that's the best you can do. I mean, I'm
Yeah, but if you build your PWA right, it accounts already for that broken browser, because it's by itself could be loaded in that browser.
stuff like CPU and memory, things that an old style WebView has little access to. That's something that you're never going to fix.
True.
So you're already starting with sort of bad technology. That's the thing is you have to inform your client. Okay, the best we can do is something that's broken by default. You know, like the browser that you get when you're in Facebook, which always crashes.
And do you talk specifically about the wrapper, or
No, I mean
about the
that's how
in general?
iOS works, right? That's what you get.
But I think that's also why we're calling it fixing it for iOS. Like it's a cheap solution that we could offer, and it was for Trouw, for Volkskrant. They have a higher budget; they can do real iOS development, basically, right? But I think this, in terms of the trade-off part.
But do you feel, I mean, you even had to cater for ads being loaded, right? I mean, you must have been like, have this little bucket on your desk all day. Oh, I'm building this. I don't know. I mean,
Well, it wasn't bumpy road, yeah, for sure.
but also it's something that would be against all your instincts.
Well,
as a web developer.
I don't believe in the native app as the future. So building a native app, what this is a phase in the process of moving all our applications to the web. And if that meant that building this meant that we could focus on PWA and make that right, sure. Was it always fun? No, not even close. But that doesn't matter, because we have PWA that's really out there, and that's succeeding, because visitor numbers double, or even
Quadruple.
more than
60.
So
the users doubled. These are all Android users or Chrome users. Because
The web usage.
The web usage on mobile. Because Safari has a newer version of their browser that they don't put in the WebView. That browser is actually so much better, that a lot of the performance gains that we put in the PWA, you see them back in even Safari. Even if you don't have an offline page, we still have considered how to make the fastest possible website that you can think of, and you see that in Safari as well.
I mean, Animate, because it meets Chrome.
Yeah.
What happened with all devices? Do you have like
good question.
browser?
In the more recent versions of Android, you have a WebView that's actually capable of handling PWAs. So in this wrapper, there was loaded PWA with all its functionality. So within Android, I had an offline fallback page that was an actual offline fallback page.
The service worker works.
The service worker works on Android. Something enough.
So you don't have to add your own browser back in the app.
If you want to go in the App Store, you have to. But
that's what I mean. Yeah.
But they have an access to
all
user.
phone that does not even Chrome. It has like what they call internet.
Yes. Samsung Internet is
Sorry.
if you have Samsung Internet on your device, you're still running Android, and you're still running the Google Play services. That brings in a WebView that runs in Chrome. So the app that the wrapper that we built, even on a Samsung device, runs the Chrome instance, and does have access to it.
There is one project that is called Cross Browser.
Yeah.
So you are like sending Chrome in. Back when you publish in the App Store. So you are sending like 20 megabytes more, but you are sure that all your clients or your customers, they have the last Chromium version.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it.
Going
by React Native,
you don't need it.
No.
We can't do it. iOS was mainly the
problem,
main issue, and you
yeah.
can't do that there. I think it's worth mentioning maybe that Cordova always says that it's a polyfill, and that sooner or later they want to be out of the picture. And this year they said our main aim is going to be making sure that we become the polyfill for progressive web apps. So you just write your progressive web app, you wrap it with Cordova, and it should work on iOS and on Android devices. It was very nice to hear. It's too late for us for this project. So, but maybe you can say something about the patterns that basically didn't match up, which were basically web. And if you wrap them, do you know what I mean? Like when we wrap them in the app, that cookie wall things, etc.
Yeah, that's something that was there obviously. So when we had when we load in the web, the PWA, we have to send a query parameter. Hey, I'm coming from the app, so don't show the cookie wall, because users are not accustomed to a cookie wall in a mobile app. The footer I mentioned earlier, get rid of it.
Because I think that's something we found out, right? That you have wildly different expectations where you open it in a browser, you navigate through it. If you open the exact same thing through the Play Store, then all of a sudden it's weird that you have a cookie wall, that you have a footer, and that you have a sticky share button, and whichever. So even though we didn't, you can't reuse. I found that we're as a web developer, we try to build one thing that works everywhere, and all of a sudden, if you actually target different platforms through stores, then users get different expectations, and you have to make things different just for the sake of being different for those expectations. I think that also bit us a bit in that project.
And I think maybe we should turn it around a bit, and users have. We want to feel our websites as if they were native apps. Maybe we have to adapt some of the patterns in native apps within our websites. Users of iOS are accustomed to have on the bottom side of their device a tabbed interface, for example. Why not put that in your website by default and have users use the patterns that they already know?
That's actually a good idea, but usually you see that there is a sticky menu button at the top. But it's actually kind of hard when you get your phone out and you want to reach the menu. You have to do this, and this is not even the biggest phone in the world.
Oh, true.
But you have to do this. Well, why do this when you can just navigate through this?
But then again, on Android, Android users are accustomed to have the header on top and have in the right top corner or left corner the menu button. So why not on your website as well account for are you Android, are you iOS, and then switch the positions around, and then you don't have those issues.
So at least on your Android phone you have this physical back button.
Then you don't have to include the back button in your UI, but on iOS you have to. So maybe that's even worthwhile to put it into your website itself. I don't know. It's up to a UX designer to think about
Cordova, that was not the best option to put to look at if it was iOS or Android.
No. True.
Because you had the whole runtime of Cordova first.
Yeah.
And then the buttons were loaded.
Yeah.
And if a user tapped back before that, then nothing was done and nothing was set.
Well, and that was the problem of running all the logic within that same container.
So basically the future is web apps in the browser with an iOS toolbar at the bottom and an Android toolbar at the top. And
if your users are accustomed to that,
if you pay,
then maybe you have to. It's bringing the best experience to your users, and if your users are accustomed to have a button bar on iOS, by all means give them a button bar.
User agents. Android has added the button bar in the design guidelines, so
there you go.
I think we can go on all night, and we still can. There's still beer left, but I would like to thank Peter and